Everybody listen to We're Not Wizards, because we are the best, and we're not wizards, no matter what anybody says. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for today and tomorrow and last Tuesday and possibly Thursday in the future. I have no idea. It's too hot and humid. I'm not liking it. I am a Scottish person. We do not deal with humidity. We do not deal with temperature. And I am sitting here sweating like the inside of a dolphin's bathing costume. However, I'm delighted, and I'm also honoured in a way to be joined by this lovely, wonderful person who you could say isn't just a behemoth in the industry. They're almost a god in the industry with a Z on the end. It's somebody they've been round the hoops and given us some hoop gods. They've been throwing some flows and laying down some lyrics and giving us some rap gods. They're been part of the Board Game Brothas. I have got Omari Akil, and he's here, and I'm going to persuade him to potentially rap, because I know he just loves to do things off the cuff. I'm only joking. Hello, Omari. How are you?
How's it going, Richard? I'm pretty good. Happy to be here. This is fun. What an intro, also.
I am. It's kind of like a scary thing. I am. If we were in a kind of Dungeons and Dragons situation and we're surrounded by, kind of a dragon and an orc, I'd be sent in to provide a distraction just by talking at the bad guys until everybody kind of managed to escape. So, how are you, first of all? Are you well?
I mean, I am well. The everything that's happened in the last 2 years has just been a wild ride, but I think riding towards ultimately good things and ultimately places where I want to be and doing things that I want to be doing. It's pretty lucky. There's still a ton of issues and challenges, every day, but I still feel pretty lucky to be in the place where I am. So, try to embrace that as much as possible and feel good about it.
We're going to talk about board games. We're also going to have a chat about the industry, but you like a bit of hip hop, and we're going to go back to the year 1989 when I was a mere slip of a lad, and for that, until that time, I'd been listening to a little bit of Bon Jovi and even Europe and even a little bit of, I'd been grinding my metal gears, and then somebody produced an album for me, and I was 15. I wasn't wearing tracksuit bottoms. I was wearing jeans, but they introduced an album to me by somebody called KRS-One.
Well, that's pretty fantastic. Thank you for whoever did that.
And coincided also with a little bit of Ice-T, and also, obviously, the kind of the synonymous one, or the one that everybody talks about, which is NWA and Straight Outta Compton. And that took me into a world as a white Scottish guy of all of a sudden being used to listen to Whitesnake and Bon Jovi, and all of a sudden having people kind of dropping lines and rhymes and everything like that kind of blew my mind at the time. What about yourself? How did you get into the music? What do you remember was the first kind of group that you listened to or song?
I mean, I came along just a little bit later. I was really fortunate though. So my brother, he's a few years older, and that's who I work with and started the company with. So he was there for basically the beginning of hip hop. Like he was
Right.
about to be a teenager, you know, like it was perfect for him. And I was basically just able to absorb a lot of that even when I was super young. Like I remember like LL Cool J playing when I was, 5 or 6.
Wow.
Like that was kind of, so it was there. It was just present because, he was still around, and hanging out with the family all the time. So I think a lot of it came from that. So some LL Cool J, and then a little later, probably when I started like paying attention more, is really, I think, one of the just classic periods of hip hop where Tupac and Biggie, Snoop Dogg, like they were all coming up at that time too. So that was really powerful. Those artists were mind blowing. Like especially Snoop Dogg having this very like cartoon rap album art, just breaking the norms in all sorts of different ways, and videos like California Love really stretching the boundary of like what hip hop can be and become. That I think those were the things that really were present for me starting out listening to hip hop. And, I kind of developed my own taste and stuff a little bit after that, but that just laid the groundwork and it was great. I loved it.
I remember for me listening to Ice-T and listening to NWA, and then thinking, is this all it's about? Is it all just about guns and violence and shootings and how much money you had and having women on your arm and stuff like that? And then I remember listening to It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. And I got that album just before Fear of a Black Planet kind of came out. And you can imagine listening to like listening on one side to Power by Ice-T, and then on the other side, all of a sudden you listen to Fear of a Black Planet, and you're just like, I didn't realize this was what it could be like. It was so strange. And and you got to understand, see, when I was growing up, there wasn't, and this is where Scotland's kind of like the way that we are, is that there wasn't a black community in Scotland at all, in my area. There was one black girl that went to my high school, and everyone else was just like, everybody else was white. There was a couple of people from Bangladesh and Pakistan and places like that, because in Scotland, the immigration came in from those places. So we were more likely to have kind of people from Bangladesh and Pakistan and India than we were likely to have kind of black people. So all of a sudden, my mind's kind of getting blown by these things I'm hearing about kind of going on. And I'm just like, I don't understand kind of where it's going, because you don't understand about kind of like the society and what's it kind of like in kind of like America. But it was mind blowing kind of at the kind of the time. Especially Chuck D. Chuck D still blows my mind every time I hear him. I never heard a voice like that.
Hip hop has such a fascinating history. It's very easy. I always think of hip hop and the nature of hip hop as being very rebellious and very sort of rooted in reality in so many ways. And it's, you can look at hip hop very sort of broadly, even in those early days, and kind of see it as being about unsavory things, when it was really just talking and telling stories about things that were real, that you had to live through, that weren't the best. And it's interesting. And then on top of that, you have the sort of like materialism that came out of hip hop at that time, especially people like Ice-T.
Oh,
Ice-T
yeah.
was making a statement like, we can be glamorous too. We can have all these things too. You know, it was also a statement of rebellion. Like, we can do whatever it is we desire. Like, Ice-T was not holding back. He was like, I'm going to live the fullest, biggest life that I can. And nobody can take that away from me. There's so much power in that idea. And it's, you know, it's so easy without the context to shrink it into something else. But really understanding the nature and story of hip hop is it takes work, but man, is it worth it? And it's good. There's so much great things there.
It was like, and then kind of like as time went on, you kind of had different tastes. Like the Beastie Boys kind of came in, and that was kind of like, there was like Paul's Boutique, which I love and I still love and I play to kind of this day. But then I also started to listen to like Digital Underground and The Far Side as well. And Digital Underground, Sex Backwards
very different sounds.
So good. But it's like when I was wanting to feel kind of like a bit more of a serious vibe, I'd be sticking Mr. D on and Flavor Flav and Public Enemy. If I wanted kind of like just to have a muck around, then I'd be sticking on like Do What You Like on Digital Underground and stuff like that. And that kind of, and then I kind of obviously, well, I didn't obviously, I kind of went more closer to kind of Ice Cube stuff, and I followed his kind of career over like a kind of a period of time. But did you, I mean, in regards to kind of like, you've met with the board game side of stuff, with like something like Rap Gods, was that an obvious choice for you to go into something like that, with that kind of the design side of things, was to say, well, this is such a, you know, this has been a reasonable size part of, you know, me, so I'm just going to potentially create a game on the back of it?
Yeah, it was the easy choice for sure to go into a hip hop game first. Easy in the sense of it was easy to make that choice, but it was a very difficult design choice once I decided to go that direction. But the fact that we were so connected to it and so passionate about the topic made the design part easy. Even though we had no idea going into it what a hip hop game would actually look like. It took some time. Write
it on the wall, hip hop game, and then it's like, okay, there's no post-it notes appearing here. What do we do about this? There's no, I can't see the post-it notes.
Well, realistically, like there were no other real models for us to use either. We thought about like what would be parallel, like for a hip hop sort of story game or a game about a hip hop career. We didn't have a lot of gaming models for that, so it was tricky. We tried to find some parallels and we found a couple, but for the game design part, it was like that. It was like, where do we even start?
And because I mean, it must have been difficult to say, right, we're just going to put it to one side and let's make a dungeon crawler, or let's make, you know, something about fluffy dinosaurs, or let's make something about kind of trade and industry. And then you're like, well, I guess we've rolled the dice. We might as well kind of get on with it. Did you and your brother kind of grow up playing a lot of board games then, when you were growing up then together? Have you always kind of
I think. Well, it's funny because we're like 13 years apart.
Wow.
Our childhoods were very different, actually. I think I might have played a few more board games than my brother, but he was also a gamer too. And he was actually kind of my introduction to video games too. So he expanded me out from board games into video games. He had the first console that I ever got to play. So we were both gamers at heart, for sure. And I reintroduced him to board games after years and years and years. Sort of as the modern industry was kind of getting its legs. I reintroduced him and showed him all the cool stuff that was out there. And it was at that point where it was like, oh yeah, we could totally do this thing. We could make a game together.
What made you decide, actually, let's just go and do something. Let's commit something to paper.
Well, honestly, his excitement around it really gave me the push that like I had more of the sort of technical skill to be able to do it. And he was just so excited and actually brought so many of the initial ideas for what the game could be about. A lot of the just conceptually what the game was about came from him. And I really stepped in and just made it mechanically work. But the core concept, it was largely my brother's game, just overall about like what it was going to be about and kind of how the flow of the game was going to be. Yeah. That idea, that vision was his. And I just put it together. I just made it work.
Was it easy did you go through quite a few iterations? Because you said it took a while to actually get it kind of working. So there was a lot of iterations to the game before you said, right, this is the one that we're going to settle on.
We did. We went through a lot of iterations, but a few core concepts really stuck through the entire design process. And one of those was the sense of progression. Like we needed to have that sense of progression, and we didn't know how it would work. So we went through a couple of different ways of kind of different phases of the game to simulate that. And we ended up with this 3-album system at the end of it. But the idea was we had to feel progression. We had to feel like your career had significant like moments that were distinguishable from things that happened at different parts in the game. So that was there. And the idea, we came up with 3 wrap resources in the very first day we were talking about it. And those 3 resources are actually the ones that stuck in the game. We renamed them just to kind of communicate better what they represented, but it was still the same idea. So those 2 things stayed the same. Everything else, went through a ton of changes, like the way that the turns worked, the way that the players interacted with each other changed quite a bit. Even the card sort of structure and how they benefited the player, that changed a lot too. But we had those few core ideas that were just there from day one.
And with the nature of the game being kind of revolved around kind of like music and things like that, did you already have stuff at the side which was like, well, we could do expansions here. We could do like the difficult second album, the follow-up stuff and things like that. Was that kind of, did you have to trim some stuff off that you could say, well, actually, we could bring that in kind of later on if we wanted to?
You know, my focus a little bit for game design is, and I don't know a better way to say this, but it's just like aiming for sort of the commercial strategy, like during the design process, because that's really kind of what you're talking about. Like, when we think about expansions, we don't tend to focus too much on that when we're dealing with like a core game design. For me, it's hard to do that. It's hard to kind of think that far forward. It's hard for me to visualize where I kind of want the game to go that early on. So I think we spent more time just focusing on getting the core game solid and trying to figure out what expansions could look like after that. And I think that helped a lot. It also, because we didn't put too much weight into any of those ideas, we didn't feel the urgency to like rush an expansion out, or there wasn't any great ideas that we came up with that we were like, we have to do this right now. This is so cool. Anything we thought that was cool, we put it in the game. And we added some things to the game very late in the process because it was like, ooh, this is cool. And, don't want to wait for an expansion. Let's just get it in there now. And so that, I think my design philosophy just like isn't so focused on expansions and stuff like that. We think about it, and we do have a couple ideas for Rap Gods expansions. But I really don't like rushing through the process of getting a game done. We took our time on Rap Gods. We're taking our time on Hoop Gods. And as much as that is sometimes frustrating to backers, like we both have such a desire to put out the absolute best thing that we can put out, that it's hard to get to the finish line because there's always something, there's always something.
I think there's a difficulty nowadays with knowing where to draw a line, and unfortunately, I think sometimes the Kickstarter thing encourages people to have so many additions and so many extra things in order to offer people, in order to entice them, because it's almost like you're kind of like trying to do a fear of missing out. An awful lot of time. I just found out that what FOMO meant like about 4 days ago. I was just like, one of those moments where you go, right, okay, now I feel like an idiot. That's where we go for. But yeah, no, I see that a lot with, it's kind of like, well, they're saying, well, I'm trying to bring a game to Kickstarter. Okay, what stretch goals would you like to see? And it's like, why are you even thinking stretch goals? Why aren't you just thinking about kind of like the product? But it seems to be kind of coming along with the whole of Kickstarter as well. I mean, Rap Gods ended up doing just over its target. Hoop Gods did almost double that as well. So was that kind of like a nice kind of surprise when it kind of went over, almost doubled what you got for
it wasn't a complete surprise. I think what we were okay at doing in terms of just like our Kickstarter process was really, we had a good sense of how much support that we had. That was the only reason we decided to move forward with the Hoop Gods Kickstarter. The entire situation and how that Kickstarter came about was a little bit tough, but we made it happen, considering all the things that were happening. And for us, it was just important to have that project. And all of this is strange because we still have been kind of operating in the industry like a first-time creator a little bit. Well, okay. I'm not going to say in a first-time creator. I would say more like in the way that Kickstarter at its core was intended, right? Like, we're not the company that's bringing the fully polished, fully complete product ready to go to market when we get to Kickstarter. We've never felt like that was necessary for us. We're making games that we want to make, and we're not specifically trying to make a ton of money off of the games. We're really just trying to put our ideas and our products out there. And so for us, I think because we're kind of operating a little bit different in that space, it's a little harder to navigate.
What was it like kind of in terms of the marketing? See, because people's perception is that once you're into your second and third Kickstarter, you've kind of got the marketing sorted out. You know exactly kind of what you're doing. Is it still a case of you still having to kind of go out there and get as many kind of bums on seats and as many people looking at it? And did, with kind of everything that was going around and happening at the time, were you kind of like, well, we really just need to make sure this gets out there. We need to make sure as many people kind of see it as well. Did you kind of hype? Did you focus kind of more, or were you just kind of like more determined to kind of get a product kind of out there?
Our whole concept, right, is like our business, and we started a publishing company for increasing representation in the industry. We started it for the purpose of changing the landscape of what type of games exist. So with that being kind of our core focus, like, we're always trying to get more eyes. We're always trying to get games out there. And, for us, doing that is doing that piece like quickly is important, and just showing people that we're doing something different is what's really, really important.
Mhm.
And then after that, making sure that the games are good and putting the time and the effort and the energy into making sure that those games are good. And then we go back to talking about them again and showing people what we got. But that's the problem with a tiny team, right? Like, we're just two people. And we are making some changes in the very near future. We're actually bringing on, we have a few more conversations to have, but we are going to bring on a third person to partner with us who has a skill set that's just, I think, way more capable of connecting with our audience and connecting with the vision that we have for the company, and moving it forward. And that'll leave me basically to focus on more of the game design and development part, and that'll leave my brother to focus more on handling some of the art, but also I think by nature of that, he's also involved in a lot of just the handling of assets and logistics and that kind of thing too. So I think things will be very different coming up into 2021, when we'll be, I think, more equipped with just another person to handle all of what it takes to be in the industry. Because we have been struggling a little bit with just the two of us, because we're both more just technically skilled. We can do technically what it takes, but the skills on the business end, on the marketing side, those have all been, we're learning as we go as much as we can, but it's tough. It's tough.
It's
and
expected.
It doesn't feel natural.
You're meant to have like 15 different hats on.
Oh yeah.
You're usually asking somebody that spends their time like by themselves in a room throwing bits of paper and dice about, and you're then saying to them, yeah, well, I know you've done this and you've done your maths and you've got your maths on your Excel spreadsheet for probabilities, but now you've got to go and do a podcast and be entertaining. You're like going, I don't know how I'm going to do that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And then it's like you need to then go on Twitter and you need to be writing that tweet that gets everybody interested in your product. And it's like, I don't even know how you tweet. I don't know. So that I know that there's a lot of expectation, and the number of, as somebody who, in the situation that I'm in, who's just a noise creator all the time, even when I'm not making, I just go about making noises. But I get contacted by people who have got 75% of the world. They've got an absolutely fantastic game, but you can just tell there's like 2 weeks until their campaign runs. They've got 75 Twitter followers and they've got 2 people following them on Instagram. They're like, here we go. And there's not somebody kind of grabbing them by the hand and kind of taking them through. And I completely kind of get that. Totally kind of understand that. Has the last couple of years been exhausting? Is there points where you've kind of sat there and went, I've done this. I can't do any more. With a situation with your ex-president, whoever he was, or still considers him, he's like, was there points where you just went, with everything going on, this is just, if I need to explain to one more person why doing this is important to me, why getting representations out of me, I'm just going to refer them to a podcast episode and they can listen to the damn thing because I can't be bored with it. Was there parts where you just went, you know what, I can't really?
I had a few moments where I wasn't sure. There was a very brief moment where I wasn't sure that I wanted to continue designing games specifically, and it was a moment where just like the combination of not feeling, I guess in some cases, like appreciated for bringing new things to the table. And a part of it was also just I think there's a lot of parts of the isolation and the injustice that just stole every ounce of creativity that I had for a time. And that it was in that I was really like, I don't feel appreciated. I don't have the creativity. Like, what is my future in this space? Thankfully, the creative part came back. And I think that as long as I have fresh ideas and I feel good about playing around with those ideas and experimenting and still creating experiences for people, as long as I still have some creativity, like I can still exist in this industry. As a designer, there was another moment where we thought we wouldn't publish games anymore, where we thought we might become a different type of company, a different type of entity that still has similar goals, but not specifically around publishing games. And that, again, it was just like the complexity that like everything was becoming more difficult, or it felt like everything was becoming more difficult for a moment. Shipping, retailers, like we didn't know how retailers were, like how local game stores were even going to survive. It was like, well, we don't even know where to go moving forward. And we talked to, a few people in the industry and got some insight on that. And ultimately, I think what all of these things did is it just made us take a step back and reevaluate some things. And we had to slow down a little bit there. We had a few moments where we were just like all in, heads down. And we look up and everything's still a little bit crazy. So I think we just had decided to take a more measured approach across the board to everything that we do, because things are changing so rapidly right now, and it's so hard to kind of deal with and adjust with that. So we're not trying to be reactive to the current situation. We're trying to just give it a little bit of time and understand and see if we can get a better feel for how to move forward over some time, instead of just like, oh no, things are crazy, what do we do? And I hope that that's helping in the long term, instead of us pushing forward and getting ourselves into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like social, do you take breaks from social media then? Because one of the things sometimes I go on Twitter and I'm just like, yeah, just press the button at the top, and I just kind of go away. In relation to sometimes what you're experiencing away from social media, is it comparable? Because sometimes you go on Twitter and it's like the entire world is on fire, and the fire is on fire, and the dog that you see that is usually saying this is fine, they're all on fire. And yet when you step outside, you're kind of like, well, actually it's not great, but it's not as bad as everybody's kind of, as some people would kind of make out.
Yeah, I mean, social media is such a love-hate relationship, because you have exactly what you're talking about. Just sometimes being on social media, you're just hyper aware of all of the issues and things that are kind of getting in your way, stopping you from moving forward. And the attitudes also that are sort of actively working against you, like you end up being hyper aware that that's happening. But at the same time, you have those connections with the people that push your creativity and really share the same ideas and values. And so I try as much as I can to really curate those spaces so that I get the things that I need more frequently than the things that are obstacles. One of the places I think we've both needed a break from social media was actually our company, our representation of our company on social media, because having it's different, right? Like you're presenting the voice for your company,
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the uncertainty for us around whether or not we were going to continue publishing games just made that voice feel very small.
Yeah.
And I think we're really in the last few months, like for a little bit, I think we thought Hoop Gods might be the last game we make. And
Wow.
so only in the last few months, I would say, have we really turned the corner and recognize exactly what it's going to take for us to move our company forward and move to the next step. And we're making some, I think, pretty significant changes to make that possible. But it's only been in the last few months that we've had a understanding of what it's actually going to take to get there. And a part of that is actually rebranding. A part of that, like I said before, is bringing on a new partner.
Yeah.
And some of it is just reimagining our design and publishing philosophy and how we actually go about it, and figuring out the partners that we need to work with. And that's what I've actually been doing more so lately is the networking side of things.
Yeah.
And finding partnerships that are actually going to help us with the challenges that we've been facing, as opposed to just, banging our head against the wall trying to do it ourselves.
I'm going to try and word this the way I can word it without sounding like an idiot, which is going to be difficult. But do you actually need to spend some time kind of almost like filtering some of the allyships that are out there? Are there people kind of who are kind of hanging on your shirt tails just so that you can go, hey, look, I'm supporting a person of color who's creating? Because I'll tell you the reason why. Like, one of the things I try to have as many kind of diverse guests as possible, but I will never ever do kind of like, I'm going to do Women's Month on We're Not Wizards, or I'm going to do Person of Color Month, and because I cannot be bothered with it. I find it's absolutely terrible. If somebody's a game designer, they want to be known as a game designer. They don't want the additional labels kind of about it. But do you find that, and I have seen this mentioned on social media a couple of times, that people talking about, we're sticking the pride flag out this month to show that we're an ally, and then as soon as it hits the end of the month, then the rainbow's gone and we're back to supporting kind of, toxic policies and stuff like that. Do you find that you have to kind of filter out or be careful of certain allyships who are being an ally to you, so that they can then wave their flag and say, I spoke to Omari today and we're now best buds. Look at me. I'm so diverse and inclusive. Aren't I lovely? Kind of thing. With that voice as well.
Specifically with that voice.
Specifically with that voice.
I mean, it's something that I do somewhat consciously, but it also is something that I do very unconsciously as well. Since I've been in the industry, I've always felt hesitant towards the kinds of support, that kind of support. And it's especially egregious during sort of like Black History Month, and that, like, it happened again in Pride Month. Like, so I am hesitant when it comes to those kinds of relationships. And, so that hesitation, I think, has helped me in some ways. But I'm sure that hesitation has also taken me out of some opportunities. But it's something that I feel like I will still always do. I think it's still important to just be very aware that there's a lot of people who are still more interested in their own benefit than the actual purpose and reason that I exist here. So I try to listen carefully and look for the cues and the sort of like things that will tell me that their interest is elsewhere. But even that is really hard to do, because there's absolutely a lot of people in the space who are actually interested in helping, are actually interested in moving things forward in the same way that I am, but they are just completely just not knowledgeable about how to engage with someone in a healthy way in that space, because they've never done it before. They don't know the right approach. Like, how do you approach a person of color about an opportunity specifically that relates to being a person of color? Even that approach can seem disingenuous if you're using the wrong words, not even because you have the wrong intention. So there's a lot of calculation, I think, that I have to make, again, sometimes consciously, sometimes subconsciously, when I'm working with anybody new, when anyone new approaches.
Okay. Because I don't, you don't want to do like it's almost like some people want a top 10 tips of being a good ally. And it's just like, well, if you're kind of asking that, if you're kind of asking, what can I do to be an ally? Well, it's like, maybe not ask the question about how you want to be an ally, and maybe just like, I don't know, stop going in with that attitude in kind of like the first place. I mean, it depends. I guess the strange situation the strange situation where I am in Scotland is that, and I mentioned this at the beginning, is there's not really, I was trying to explain this to a friend the other day, is we kind of reap the rewards of what happened in America. So there's lots of places in like Glasgow and stuff like that where you've got streets, you've got buildings, you've got everything like that are named after businesses that were found on kind of slavery and colonialism and everything like that. In America itself, they're the end result. They're kind of living kind of through that. Sometimes we are like, it's almost like if I went out and said, right, I am going to find a person of color to get involved in board gaming, it's almost like I'm borderline tokenism. Because if I went out to the housing estate that I lived in, there's not like a kind of a black community in the area that I live in. Not because I am in kind of, I am in this particular, it's not like, Chicago or whatever, it's not like there's a definitive defined area like America. It's just that there isn't, the population of Scotland is like the percentage of people of colour in Scotland is very small. So it's like balancing it up with tokenism and stuff like that as well, which is always kind of difficult. But do people have to walk a tightrope, or do they just have to dive in and say, look, I want to get other people involved who don't look like me? Do I just ask people, or do I reach out through communities? Or, I guess that's the kind of the difficulty that I see.
Yeah. I mean, it is difficult. I think the approach that I feel typically works the best is just the most compassionate one, and just understanding and admitting to not knowing when you don't know. And that is typically enough for me to kind of like extend myself out if I need to, like that level of understanding. And it could be so easy, like just giving someone an opportunity, and also just being very open about like their agency in that choice. Sometimes that doesn't come across. People are like, hey, you should do this thing with me because I'm doing this thing. And it can sound very entitled, but just a simple, but I totally understand that, you may be busy, you may have other projects, and totally understand if you can't do it. Like even just small, just mentions of compassion, of just treating someone like a human being goes a long way. And a lot of people don't have that in their just like natural lexicon when they're working with people, especially when you've kind of operated your business in the same way for a long time and it's been effective.
Yeah.
You don't know that when you shift your focus to a different population or a different group, just people who are very different from who you're normally working with, that your approach is just not gonna work the same way.
No,
It's like
no.
it should be obvious, and unfortunately it's not, and people think they can just do the same things and it's going to be as effective. So just really just thinking about it, understanding that we are absolutely complex humans, and going for, to anyone with anything, you really try to put yourself in their shoes and understand where they're coming from. And it's just hard. It's just hard.
I mean, I'll be honest, I wanted you on the show because of the way that you kind of, your sartorial elegance, the way that you dress. I mean, it's just, there's many a time
I'll take it.
I've absolutely raged quit from Twitter and said, I can't, and say, I can't believe he's wearing that. I mean, it looks so, there's no way that hat should work with that jacket. But at the same time, so as well as that, you've been doing a bit of rapping. Is that something that you do on a regular basis, or because I saw your little thing quite recently, and I'm just saying, do you just pull it out of the bag, or is this because with my background, I have tried to kind of rewrite lyrics to do kind of board game songs, and I've done one. I did one recently. I did Shiny New Cardboard High, and it was a riff on Harry Styles' Watermelon Sugar High. And I'm just wondering,
nice.
with your kind of your song progress, if the board games don't work out, are you considering going into like a kind of a Paula Deming type thing where you kind of do parody songs of board games in a rap type style?
So this is one of my big challenges, I think, being in the industry, and is that I can't just do one of those. So I think as long as you see my name on the internet associated with board games, you could roll the dice, and it could be any number of things that I'm doing in the space. Yeah. And music is one of them. I've been writing songs on and off for probably the last 15 years. Like, I mean, I'm sure I did some as a kid, and I'm not exactly counting those, but I've been somewhat serious about producing music for such a long time, but it never got to the point where I felt good about sharing with anyone. So right. I have pages and pages and pages, actually, in some cases, notebooks that are just filled with lyrics and writing and poetry too. I had a stint where I was mostly just writing poetry. And so I love words, and I love language. And I think hip hop most eloquently kind of embodies what I like about lyrics in music. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I landed. And yeah, I have random lyrics about board games written all throughout my OneNote notebook. That's
an incredibly long way to say I'm horrifically talented across all levels. Thank you very much.
Not exactly my intention, but
it's just
I guess there's some truth in that.
I don't know why you're wearing the top that's got the kind of the gold lettering that says "I'm the best." Shush you. Kind of, it's just absolutely terrible.
Jeez, Rich.
I just it's like I came on here for a friendly conversation. I'm walking away going, I don't know why I bother. I'm just like, what's the point? Might as well just give up. Are you going to start a podcast next? Is that the next thing?
I mean, I do have a podcast plan, but it's not.
Of course you do.
It's not specifically about board games, because I don't want to do a board game podcast. I think there are so many stellar board game podcasts. Like, I don't want to compete with that. It is going to be adjacent to being a nerd and a gamer, but not specifically about board games. But yes, I am maybe doing a podcast also.
Just try to make me feel better. I love that.
It's really
It's
different.
like,
It's really. Oh, so here's the problem, though.
right,
Is
okay, here we
that
go. Okay, the struggle
I
is real.
know the struggle is actually real. I've had problems, and I've had problems with this for most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to just presenting myself as a person in a creative space,
Mm-hmm.
what do I never know what to tell people. What do I actually do? Like, it's always contextual. If I'm, half of the time I'm a board game designer, but half of the time I'm a publisher, half of the time I'm a content creator. The math doesn't work out. There's not that many halves, but I think like I can't. Sometimes I don't even know how to present myself. And if you look at a lot of like podcasts and appearances that I have, when it's come trying to introduce myself, I just fall flat because it's just so much, and I never know what to pick or choose or say. But that comes across sometimes, and I've sort of felt this sometimes, like in social media context, it comes across sometimes as being flighty or flaky, or like not having like a real passion for anything, and people can't engage the same way, and sometimes they get distracted. Like somebody who follows me because of this one thing, when I start posting about the 5 other things that I'm doing, they lose interest. So I end up having issues with people kind of embracing all the different parts of me, when a lot of people, especially when they're engaging with social media, sometimes they're looking for specific things and are trying to curate specific types of spaces. And I break that. Often.
I think in that situation, you just need to start referring to yourself in the third person.
Will that make it easier?
I don't know. And then you can just, then you've got the ability to divorce yourself away from taking any responsibility over your own actions. And you can say, just like, today, Omari is going to be making some art. That's what Omari's going to be. Join us later on, where I tweet out the art that I've done, and you can feel free whether or not to judge that fairly or unfairly. I think that's probably the way to go.
Third person.
You just third person all the way. Just all the way.
I say this sometimes. I say this usually in jest, but there's absolutely a level of seriousness to it. But I have always felt like a part of me just wants to be like that Donald Glover in the board game space, like someone who can be successful in different ways, and people do embrace it. But I also recognize his path to that was a lot of different weird sort of segments of entertainment. And eventually they all came together, but it took a very wild sort of roundabout turn to get there. So I'm just like embracing the challenges right now, and hopefully one day it'll all kind of like gel together. So we'll see.
So are you thinking that you will be in a Star Wars film then?
I mean, ideally, yes. But that's the one that I feel like is not going to happen.
Just hanging on the arm of Lando.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be in a blockbuster film. That's the one that I'm not
matching mustaches, and you could have the lilac cape.
Yeah, there you go.
And he could have the bright yellow one like in the film, and everything will be fine.
If it's me, it has to have sparkles on it. So we got to have some sequins or something on the cape. If we're gonna rock a cape,
there any other way to do a cape?
That's fair. I don't know.
Absolutely. I'm surprised I even need to ask the question, considering the number of sparkles that you have on the lettering that still says you're the best.
It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I will never wear that shirt, but I appreciate that shirt exists and people wear it, because
I'm pretty sure we could get something made up for you, which is just like an entire range just for you. Sir Meeple will do it for you. If you ask them, you could have your entire range, because that's where we have our t-shirts, and it could be in the third person type t-shirts.
Wow.
You know,
This is getting interesting. You're putting ideas into my head.
just Omari says fashion, and that's all. You know, and
That's
that's
it.
on the on a t-shirt. Done.
Be careful. I'm going to start writing this down.
You just have to write. I'm surprised you don't have to write it down because we're recording it, so everything's fine.
Look at that. We're good to go.
Games wise, because we got to talk about board games again. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
What's next on the horizon? Because you've talked.
Yeah.
We'll talk. Let's talk rebranding. You've talked. We're just going to do the rebranding thing.
We're going to do it. Okay.
We are going to, yeah. And we'll release when, so you're, we might as well.
We might as well. I'm for it. If we're going to talk rebranding, I'll have to show you the logo, because that was, I'm not going to say that it really inspires me now. Like, we had conversations about rebranding, and we had a lot of talks about sort of business wise, like what we were trying to do and how we were going to operate. We've been talking to a person that's potentially a new partner for us, who is probably smarter and more talented than I am, which is exciting. Just to have somebody on the team who is just like extremely skilled, like seriously, like just is finishing writing up a book right now. I can't even believe you. And it's 100% true. I promise. But a part of it has been, well, two things. The person we're bringing in is a woman, and just because of the power that I think she will bring to the company, we are moving away from sort of our masculine branding. Like, we're branded as Board Game Brothas because we're brothers and also brothers. And we cared about board games, and that meant a lot to us, to kind of have our company be just pronounced as Blackness and embodying Black culture. So that was all really, really important to us. So we needed to find a way to rename the company, but still connect back to our Blackness and what we love. So the way we decided to do this, very serendipitously, because the woman who is potentially going to be our new partner is, and we'll have to announce that later because there's still talks to be had.
Oh no, yeah. I'm not asking for the world exclusive.
No. I got you.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with that.
But she is also as much into sneakers as we are. So the one place that we could all sort of combine our love for our Blackness and sneakers, we felt like was in the name of this company. So it's called Colorway Game Labs. And the term colorway, if you're not familiar, is a sneaker culture term, and it just describes like the style of the shoe and the color that it comes in. And so various shoes have different colorways. That's what it's called. But also, just we felt like having the word color in the name just also embodies a part of our mission. Like games that embrace color is something that's important to us. And we mean that in every sense of the term. Color in just vibrancy, right? Like, that is important to us. Color in terms of the people and diversity that's involved. We want the full spectrum. And we think that's the way. And the Game Labs part, I think for us, is really speaks more to what we want to be in the industry. And we want to do things in a little bit of an experimental way. And I think that the word lab gives a sense of that. So when you see us doing weird things in the space, it doesn't feel jarring. It feels like, oh yeah, this is what they're about. And let me show you the logo. And really, it all came together when we started talking, and my brother sketched up some ideas. We went back and forth, and we landed on this. And it really just like it just made us all so excited to change and to have this new imagery. And we kept the crown, of course, on this logo because there's a crown on our original logo. So we wanted to kind of honor that and bring that into the new company. But we think this just so much better just demonstrates who we are and what we want to do. So I hope that people like it. Colorway Game Labs is, I think, going to be very different and bring something even better to the table than what we were doing before.
Are you having a UK version of the logo where you spell the word colour correctly?
That's hilarious. And I don't know. I think so. This is the fun part about this logo is that in the whole concept of colorways is that we're going to have a variety of these logos in different colors, and we get to actually play around with the names of things. And I feel like doing a UK version.
You should have a UK. Well, I'm not saying a UK version. Fun. Just one that's spelt properly. That's all I'm saying.
I can do that for you, Rich. I just want,
even if you just like you put it into Microsoft Paint and draw one round and kind of like the spray, this the color of the pencil one. So just a little U in there. That's all we're asking. Nothing more.
I can do it for you. I'll
tell you what, you do that, and that'll be the one that goes in the show notes. That's the one that I'm going to put. That's the one that's going to put there.
Awesome.
If people have listened along tonight and they want to find you on the internet webs, where do you exist on the internet webs, Omari?
So many different places, but you can find me most easily. I am Akilaverse, AKIL AVERSE on all of the places. So that's probably the easiest one because I'm on Twitter under that name, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and I could probably name 7 more because I just created those profiles everywhere. But Akilaverse is the easiest way to find me. Twitch, I spend a lot of time on Twitch, so that's a good one too. If people are looking for, again, the random things that I do, they're all over the place.
It's just worthwhile, and just do it. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to let you. It's kind of like letting a small child into the room on Christmas Day, and there's just presents everywhere. And I'm going to say, I'm going to put some links in the show notes so people can find those presents and they can unwrap those delights just to see the little smiling faces. So we shall make sure we put them in the show notes so that we have got notes to show. If you want to follow what we're doing, then just go to the internet webs and search for We're Not Wizards. You shall find us where the wild things are, as we say, and it's still one of my favourite films, even though it's quite sad. And you'll find us on Twitter and Instagram, and you'll find us on our website, which is we'renotwizards.com, and you'll find us on our blog where we write about reviews at we'renotwizards.co.uk. If you like to have some cloth on your back that has several of our well-known and terrible sayings, then you can go to sirmeeple.com and search for We're Not Wizards, and you will find us there as well. If you like what you've listened to today and you want to give us a rating or review, go to the Apple Podcasts, and remember, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed, but don't give us 1 star because I am an ugly crier and you do not want to make me cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not been average tonight or today is rather wonderful, rather fantastic, Omari Akil. Thank you very, very much for coming on.
No, thank you for doing this, and lovely chat. Yeah, absolutely loved all of it. Appreciate it.
There's only 2 more things to do. The first thing is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Omari?
We're not wizards.
There you go. And the second thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Omari. Say goodbye.
See ya.
You would have been better saying Omari says goodbye.
Omari says goodbye. There it is. Third person.
Third
You did
person.
this.
This is how it started.
Anybody's upset about it, blame Richard.
Then you can. That's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll sixes, make something awful. And until the next time, goodbye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.